Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners, to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Thursday edition of the show. We are getting very close to that weekend. We have our third episode of the week. Of course, we'll have a Pewter post-game show on Sunday after the Bucs game, and we're going to spend today talking about the latest news from the Advent Health Training Center, maybe some bigger stories surrounding the NFL, and most importantly, how can the Bucs get to 3-0? There's no question they're a favorite in this game. They should take care of business against the Broncos, but it's the NFL, and anything can happen. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my fellow colleague from PewterReport.com. It's Adam Slaban. Adam, how we doing?
Matt, we're doing great. It was a great Thursday at the Bucs facility today. Heard from Liam Cohen, Casey Rogers, had a nice open locker room, talked to Mike Evans, and overall, it's an exciting week because the Bucs, they go into Raymond James Stadium 2-0, and they're quite convincing favorites to become 3-0. I believe the latest odds were 6.5, the Bucs being favored. But overall, to be a Bucs fan right now, it's exciting times, and so it makes for an exciting podcast.
Absolutely, positively. And yeah, last I checked the Bucs, I saw 7. Other sites do 6.5. It kind of fluctuates throughout the week. So, try to get it as low as you can. If you're a Bucs fan, you want to bet on the Bucs, I'd be pretty pumped if I saw, at 6.5, because then they could still win by 7. By the way, shout out to all the Pewter people that are joining the show, whether you're a Pewter Report YouTube channel member or just a fan of the show and tuning in. We appreciate all of you, and thank you for your support. And you mentioned exciting times, Adam, with the Bucs, and it's very, very true. It is an exciting time if you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. They obviously figured out the quarterback situation with Baker Mayfield. I think many of us would agree that Liam Cohen is already ahead with this offense than Dave Canales was last year. We'll talk about Dave Canales later and what's going on with the Carolina Panthers. And the defense, I think, is already improved from a season ago, and a big thanks to Jordan Whitehead. But I think one of the most exciting matchups specifically in this game coming up between the Bucs and the Broncos, and the Bucs are heavily favored, but the Broncos have one really good player on defense, and that's Patrick Surtain, who unfortunately just eclipsed Antoine Winfield Jr. as the highest paid defensive back in all of football. But it makes for a great matchup between Mike Evans and Patrick Surtain. Adam, your thoughts on this big-time matchup and, how it may go on Sunday?
Yeah, so when I look at Pat Surtain, obviously one of the best corners in the NFL and deservedly got that big deal. So when I look at the matchup between Mike and Surtain, you kind of wonder, is another big game in store for Chris Godwin? Liam Cohen spoke glowingly about Godwin's play through 2 games so far, and just his ability to catch everything that's thrown his way. Him taking notes, and Cohen even going so far. Josh Capo did a story about setting him up and kind of like doing a few screenplays that really set up his wheel route that went for 41 yards and a touchdown. You kind of expect Godwin to have more of a role, but when you look at Evans, it's a more favorable game than maybe last week against the Lions, just because the Lions don't have those star-studded safeties or the familiarity that Carlton Davis provided. I think Evans will be able to exploit Surtain in certain coverages and be able to get open, create separation. And the Bucs, they should be able to control the clock, control the time of possession, so that'll give him more opportunities to get some targets and some catches.
No doubt about it, Adam. I still think this is a game where Mike can maybe not necessarily. Well, here's the problem that I'm struggling with, because I do think there is a world where Mike Evans absolutely cooks, and maybe it's because he's beating Surtain, but it's also because the Bucs can kind of get him open in different ways. I'm still waiting for them to run this pick play that they did in Jacksonville during the joint training camp practices. They did it at the goal line with Mike. I don't know when we'll see it, but I think we'll see it eventually at some point. So I mentioned the stat yesterday. I'll bring it up again. Mike Evans, in his career, within the first 3 games that he's played, not weeks, the games that he's played, he's recorded at least 100 receiving yards in one of those 3 games to begin a season. He's done that every year except for twice. That was his rookie year in 2014 and then in 2017. So since 2018, he's gotten 100 yards in a game by the end of the third week of the season. He had a very solid week one. Obviously, the 2 touchdowns for 60 yards. I think it was 61, maybe 62. And then he had 41 yards or 42 yards against the Lions. Still helpful, got some first downs and things like that. But we all know that was the Chris Godwin game. If it was many other teams and defensive backs that Mike is going against, I'd be like, pencil it in. Mike Evans getting 100 yards.
Right.
And also, Jeff the Champ brings up a good point with garbage QB play, too. Well, we all know the history of quarterback Mike Evans has played with. That's a terrible thing to say about Tom Brady. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right.
Fucking weird. But I think the fact that Surtain is likely going to shadow or follow Mike Evans throughout the entire field makes it a little bit different. So I'm curious if we'll see Evans like in the slot a little bit more, maybe get some of those mesh routes, some pick plays like I talked about before to get Surtain away from Mike and kind of let Mike do his thing. But I think you bring up a good point about Godwin too.
Yeah. And just with those pick plays, having Mike in motion, I think would be like pivotal because you saw what Godwin was able to do in different packages. Having Mike do the same would create a lot of advantageous plays.
And I also think this is a big opportunity to get Jalen McMillan going. McMillan only has 2 catches so far, but they were impactful plays. He had a touchdown. He should have had 2 touchdowns, but he had a touchdown week 1. The catch that he made against the Lions this week, or last week, I should say, that was for 21 yards and ended up leading to the rushing touchdown by Baker Mayfield that he later had on that drive. So eventually you're going to have a big performance from Jalen McMillan. I'm not saying 8 catches, 200 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But we've seen in the past, teams will find ways, not for the long term, but in small doses, teams will find ways to try to prevent Mike and Chris from getting the football. We kind of saw it last week, right? Chris Godwin was tremendous in the first half. He didn't have a catch in the second half. Part of that's not just like, hey, we're going to triple team Chris Godwin. There are other factors that get involved. But I think McMillan, it's going to be important to get him going specifically in this game. And we just talked about Chris Godwin a moment ago. Another big thing I'm curious with as it pertains to Liam Cohen is we spoke to Cohen today, and he confirmed that the touchdown that Chris Godwin had, that was a specific wrinkle. We got to give a big shout out to Josh Capo for really kind of digging in and finding this one. But that play was specifically a wrinkle designed for Detroit to get them to bite on the little fake screen that they faked going to Bucky Irving, because the Bucs ran so many screens in week 1. We obviously know how dominant Rachaad White was in that aspect, but they got the Lions to fake on the screen. Godwin even pretended like he was blocking and then was wide open down the field for a touchdown that went for 41 yards, their biggest scoring play early on in this season. I'm curious, and I'm not exactly sure what it would be, even, after rewatching the game and looking at the tape and stuff like that. I'm curious what we may have seen against the Lions that the Bucs offense and Liam Cohen specifically will kind of take and be like, all right, we did this a couple of times. Now we're going to run this new wrinkle against Denver specifically. So I think the way that Liam Cohen has been able to build things up and then, have you looking the other way. These little tricks, and I don't mean trick plays, but these little tricks that he's kind of drawn up early in the season, I'm excited to watch that too.
Yeah, definitely. You make a great point about McMillan and just his usage overall. Even when you look at past wide receiver 3s for the Bucs, like Russell Gage, he even had like some big games where he would maybe have 5 or 6 catches. I think that time is coming soon for McMillan, where his involvement kind of increases when teams cover more for Mike and Chris. And then also to the point about just the offense in general, building it brick by brick. Like, you don't want to show everything in week 1, but in week 2, you kind of saw Liam Cohen. He really was playing chess, not checkers out there. And he wanted to set up a big play by running some smaller plays, and it paid off. So in terms of the offense in general, you're kind of seeing it already be more advanced than it was last year. And that's going to only get more advanced and more complicated as the season goes on.
Yeah, very well said. I want to get to this comment from Lord Jimbo, too, who says, Matt Adam, on a team with 17 tackles, how is School the best option as a backup? I
17.
appreciate the comment. Yeah, I appreciate the comment. And it's something that I wanted to address as well, because it looks like that starting right tackle, who we did see out in the forest today, it looks like Luke Gedeke is, check out our Instagram for that one. While he was running individually, and our pal JC Allen tweeted this out before, that it's very much looking like Luke Gedeke is not going to be available for Sunday's game against the Denver Broncos, which means Justin School is back for another week starting at right tackle. But the reason why I want to address this, obviously he's the starting right tackle, Luke Gedeke, and that's important news for Bucs fans to know going into the game. But Liam Cohen today, when we spoke to him, obviously we brought up, the protection and, what was the issue there. He actually himself took some of the blame for what went on with Justin School. I mean, as we all know, Aiden Hutchinson is a big time edge rusher in the NFL. But he really pointed out that Justin School only allowed 2 pressures in the game, or allowed 2 sacks in the game. And Cohen took the blame for one of those sacks that were allowed by Justin School. He didn't divulge really what specifically happened that was, his fault in that situation. But I think we have to remember, one, it couldn't really have gotten any worse going up against Aiden Hutchinson. And Denver does bring the blitz. They do have one pretty good edge rusher. But they're not playing Aiden Hutchinson again. The pressures were not as bad as everyone thought. And I think the Bucs, protection-wise, can only go up from what they had against Detroit. So I thought that was really interesting from Liam Cohen today.
Yeah, definitely. And when you kind of look at Justin School, like, he didn't start a game since, I think, 2021 with the 49ers. So you're going back a couple years where he's seen extended game time, and then going up against Aiden Hutchinson. Going in, we were talking about that it wasn't going to be a good matchup at all for him, and that Hutchinson would kind of take him to school. But thankfully this week, having another week to kind of be in that starting lineup and to know and have expectations of what it'll be like going in, I think is critical. And then the fact that he doesn't really have to face that top tier edge rusher. Cohen mentioned getting him more help, maybe on first and second downs and more jumbo packages. I think that'll be key. And then when you also look at Hutchinson's efficiency last week, he had 5 pressures and capitalized and had sacks on all of them. To expect that again, I mean, very unlikely. And you're also going up against lesser players. Cohen did mention Zach Allen, who has 13 pressures in 2 games. He's kind of that workhorse along the defensive line. He was giving the Steelers earlier in the season some fits up front, and just his ability to use his hands, and not only the run game, but the pass game. So that's something that the Bucs are going to have to neutralize. But outside of him, though, there isn't really that other big threat. I mean, Baron Browning, he's been in the league a couple of years now. He's athletic, well-built, but are they going to be able to consistently get to the quarterback without blitzing? The answer is no. And Baker Mayfield has been able to counteract that blitzing throughout the season.
Yeah, very much. I mean, he's done it with his legs a lot. And that would be another concern of mine as it pertains to, yes, I mean, the Broncos are a bad team. The Bucs should win this one by a fair amount. But the Bucs can't just show up and expect to, win by 30 or whatever it is. Like, there is some talent that Denver has. And like the 2 guys on the defense that we kind of already mentioned. But what concerns me specifically for the Bucs going into this game is because Denver blitzes so far more than any other team in the league. They're first in blitz percentage. It's about, I think, 48 or 49%. So we're literally talking about like every other play that they are blitzing. We've seen early on with the Bucs in pass protection. Let's remember, Baker Mayfield has bailed out the pass protection from time to time. I'm not saying the pass protection has been awful or poor, so whatever it is, but it looks a little better than it has because of Baker's scrambling ability. Now, let's remember the Aiden Hutchinson, the first sack that he had, that was on a stunt. That was actually on Cody Mauch when, he went towards the inside and Mauch missed it. So my concern with the blitzing of the Denver Broncos is what's that communication going to be like between Graham Barton, Cody Mauch, and Ben Bredesen? Now, they can blitz off the edge as well, but if it's a linebacker, you're likely going through the A, B, or C gap before you're really going to the outside. So I do worry with some of the miscommunication that we've seen already from the offensive line that the Broncos could find a little bit of success in that area. Now, Baker Mayfield's been getting rid of the ball much quicker, and he's been scrambling as well. So that's another way to counteract it. But you don't want the Bucs and Baker to have to get rid of the ball quickly out of necessity versus, hey, Chris Godwin's open over the middle or Mike Evans is wide open. Let me get rid of this ball now. So I think that's a little bit of the chess game, the cat and mouse game that we may see on Sunday.
Yeah, and I really like that point about the Broncos and just how heavy their blitz usage has been. Because when you look at Baker Mayfield, he's been second in the league with 257 passing yards when he's been blitzed. And he kind of talked about being able to have success, like moving on the run, finding guys like Chris Godwin, even when he evades the pocket. And you mentioned the first sack that Hutchinson had being on a stunt. I think that's how the Broncos will have most of their success, is using those stunts to get inside that interior offensive line. Because with Wirfs on one side, you expect School and maybe a chip blocker on the other. With having a guy like Zach Allen, sending that pressure up the middle and like putting Graham Barton and Cody Mauch on their toes, I think that's going to create a lot, like the most pressure that the Broncos will get on Sunday.
I think so. By the way, I apologize if I didn't mention this. Luke Edeke is still in concussion protocol, so that's why he hasn't been practicing. Obviously, he has to, pass the concussion protocol test before he can go out and play for the Bucs and even practice. So we'll pay attention to it. But like we said, reports have already come out that it doesn't look like Edeke is going to be available for this game on Sunday. So once again, the Bucs have injury issues. We haven't seen Vita Vea or Kalijah Cansey at all. The injury report's not going to come out until this podcast is done because the time difference with Denver being in Mountain Time, they like to send it out at the same time when both teams are done practicing and everything. So, but yeah, I mean, outside of Luke Edeke, Vita Vea, Kalijah Cansey are the two big ones to look at. Josh Hayes is back to practicing, which is nice. And then if you saw on our social media as well, Antoine Winfield Jr. is running individually. Nice to see. He's not going to be ready for Sunday's game. But yeah, that's some of the injury updates for everybody. One more thing I want to talk about with the offense specifically, Adam, is red zone efficiency for Tampa Bay. Because they're 2-0, and that's great. But I think you can obviously tell why why they were able to be so dominant against Washington and score 37 points versus Detroit. Still a great win, monumental win. I think one of the biggest wins in the career of Todd Bowles. But specifically, that game was close to the end because the Bucs only had one touchdown in the red zone. Let's remember, Chris Godwin's touchdown was 41 yards. That was, a shot down the field. Outside of that, the biggest thing was the red zone the whole game because the Bucs were getting stops defensively, but not executing offensively. So for me, I think that's one of the biggest things that needs to improve for Sunday's game as well.
I agree. And when you look at the Bucs offense, you see, they're fourth in scoring offense. They're doing great, averaging 28 points a game, but they've also left a lot of points on the board, Matt. Chase McLaughlin through 2 games, he's had 5 field goals. Even though they scored 37 in the first week against the Commanders, he kicked 3 of them. And the fact that Liam Cohen was like, we can get more points on the board. 37's great, but it should have been more. It should have been in the 40s, you would like to imagine. And then going last week against Detroit, their ability to move the ball was kind of stunted by the lack of a run game. When you kind of look through the first 2 weeks, the fact that they haven't been able to marry the run and the pass just yet kind of makes the red zone efficiency like one reason for it. But when you look going ahead, having that stable offense in the red zone, I mean, you have a guy like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, he's found the end zone twice in 2 games, but you have a lot of threats that can get in the red zone and score and get into the end zone. It just hasn't happened yet. So it's something that will need to be improved on.
And I believe that they'll be able to get better in the red zone. It obviously reared its ugly head at times last season. I don't see this being a long-term storyline. I actually do believe that the Bucs figure out their red zone problems. I don't want to say is there a difference between an issue and a problem? Like, is an issue a little bit greater than just a
Yeah.
problem in general?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Regardless, yeah. So yeah, right now it's something that's just nagging the Bucs a little bit. It's not a serious like, oh my god, we need to sit down
It's
and
not
have a come to
plaguing them.
Jesus moment.
Yeah.
It's exactly. Like the red zone right now, if the red zone was an injury, it would be questionable right now. Certainly
Yeah.
not doubtful or out. And speaking of injuries, we have a super chat asking about one from Q's44. Thanks for the
Thank
$2
you.
super chat. I'm sure you're asking about this to see if Sean Tucker will get some more availability. How's Rashad doing, Matt, with the injury report? And thanks again, Q's44, for this super chat, and appreciate you watching the show as you always do. Rachaad White was out there today. There was reports earlier in the week by Jeremy Fowler that the groin injury is not looking like a serious one. He's been at practice. He's been moving around. Haven't seen him move like too much, but I think he's going to be good to go for the game, and it's going to be a lot of Rachaad White and Bucky Irving as well. Maybe because that he's dealing with this injury, we'll see even a little bit more of Bucky Irving, which I think a lot of us want. Bucky has increased his snap percentage through the two games. He started at around 30 to 31 and moved up to 35%. And I'm not going to lie, I'm a huge fan of the pony package. I love when Bucky and Rachaad are on the field at the same time. It's a unique look. Not a ton of teams do it. You obviously have to have the personnel to do it. You may see it tonight in the Jets-Patriots game with Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, but I digress.
Two studs.
I want more of the two studs. Exactly. No doubt about it. I want more of the pony package. They scored. They were in the pony package when Chris Godwin scored his touchdown, because obviously Bucky was going in motion, and that kind of set off the whole screen. Excuse 44 follows it up with, thanks, Matt. I root for all three backs. Yeah, as you should. Sean Tucker may have his moments at times this year. Maybe he'll get a kickoff return. But I think that's another kind of thing overall, Adam, for the Bucs, is that depth has been so freaking important for Tampa Bay early in the season.
It has. And each area of the team, when you look at the defensive line, the fact that they've been able to withstand the injuries of Vita and Elijah last week, but then it looks like they're going to be doing it again this week as they have in practice. Like guys stepping up along the defensive line, like CJ Brewer, Mike Green, and then at linebacker, at inside linebacker, depth still being key. The fact that the rotation of KJ Britt and Servassier Dennis has held up this well during the season. At the cornerback position, they were down to a couple of guys. They still held strong. And then you mentioned the running backs and the depth there. I did want to touch on one point. With Rashad's injury, you kind of wonder if Bucky will get more touches, but also maybe it's a thing where Rashad, he starts the game, goes out on the first series, Bucky goes out on the second. They kind of alternate maybe, and like kind of even snap counts with Rashad battling that groin injury. The fact that he's maybe, I think he's averaged like 2 yards a carry so far. You've seen more bigger moments from Bucky, so maybe that will kind of play a factor.
Yeah, that's a good observation. I'd be very curious if they do so, because I know it's a little apples to oranges, but the Bucs obviously do that with their outside linebackers a lot, where like now this version of it'll be Yaya and JTS, and then they'll just go to Anthony Nelson and Chris Braswell, where a lot of us, and Scott and I have talked about it, you and I have talked about it a little bit as well, where we want to see more specialist situations where, maybe you save Marquise Watts and put him on a third down situation a little bit, but he doesn't play first and second down, or JTS has been getting it done in the pass rush, but in other years, have him play first and second down because he's pretty good in the run, and then put in someone different. But to bring it to the running backs sometimes it's kind of like just riding the hot hand. Todd Bowles has said that a lot before in the past, but Liam Cohen has talked a ton about how much he hates like balancing out the usage and all those things. So one way to take something off of the plate of Liam Cohen is just saying, all right, Rashad, you're in on this drive. Then we'll bring in Bucky for the next one. He just, as you said, alternate each time. I think that's really interesting. It's a great way to keep everybody fresh, and then you can still have the pony package and some other different looks. I'm curious if they'll get back to the screen game. I know they did it some with Chris Godwin, but there really wasn't a lot of the running back screen game that was so big time in week one. So I am quite curious if that is something that will return for this game specifically against Denver, especially if they blitz so much. I mean, one great way to counteract a blitz is by getting the screen game going.
Yeah, especially with two receiving backs too, and Rashad White and Bucky Irving. Like they have the archetypes and running backs to make the screen game successful and a staple of the offense. And you saw it bearing fruit in week 1. And
Yeah.
after facing a tough Lions defense last week, I mean, the fact they're going up against the Broncos, like you have Surtain, you have Allen, but everybody else, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities for big plays.
Now, of course, the Broncos, it's another way of saying a horse, and horsepower is all about going fast. I know one way to go even faster is after downing a Celsius energy drink, which is the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. Check out all the great flavors that Celsius has, including some of their new ones, which is the sparkling watermelon lemonade and the sparkling kiwi strawberry. There's tons and tons of awesome flavors. So if you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, and maybe you're in a different location than where you regularly are, you can go to the Celsius store locator on their website, punch in your address, and it'll tell you the closest place where you could pick one up. Could be a Walmart, a Piggly Wiggly, a Stop and Shop, a Grab and Go, a health and fitness store, a Publix, a King Cullen. What else am I missing? A Wallbounds, an Aldi, a Winn-Dixie, or it could be your bodega.
Bodega.
That one sounded like it hurt you a little bit. You all right?
Yeah.
and once you keep going to your local bodega and you know you love Celsius and you want more, that's when you can buy it in bulk. I'd recommend getting the variety pack, because variety is the spice of life. And why limit yourself to one flavor of Celsius when you can have all the flavors of Celsius? So you do that on Amazon with the subscribe and save, and you can have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drinks of pewterreport.com. I was just laughing at a couple of comments here. This one from Narav. Shotgun a sparkling orange Celsius before Sunday's game. Not a bad idea. And Kel's 808 saying, just got my Arctic vibe. That's awesome. That's my personal favorite. So shout out to you, Kel's 808. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you're watching in Hawaii. So that's very cool to see. Angelina S., a Pewter Report YouTube channel member, says, I think that would be a great counter to Denver's tendency to blitz so much. Yeah, I'm in full agreement. I mean, it's one way to slow down a good pass rush, or even slow down a blitzing team like the Denver Broncos. Want to talk about the defense as well. Had this comment before from Jared Cox that wanted to get to. Jared says, Yaya sacks are coming. We need Cansey and Vita. Well, unfortunately, Kels is watching from Hawaii. That's not unfortunate. That's great. Unfortunately, the bad part is that we're not going to get Kalijah Cansey and probably not Vita Vea this week. But the good news is that the sacks can still be coming for Yaya Diaby, Adam, because the Bucs pass rush as a whole, and we kind of spoke about this with Casey Rogers today, the Bucs pass rush has been good, but the numbers aren't there. Like Yaya doesn't have a sack. They had a couple sacks against Washington. They did not record a sack against the Lions, but they had double-digit quarterback hits. They got in the face of Jared Goff, and, especially that interception by Christian Izien was forced by the pressure. So even though Yaya doesn't have a sack in the column just yet, I think they're coming, and especially with the news that the Broncos, just put their starting right tackle, Mike McGlinchey, on injured reserve and won't be available for this game. I think this is prime time viewing, even though it's not a prime time game, it's 1:00, but this is a prime situation for Yaya Diaby to get not just his first sack of the season, but maybe a multi-sack game.
And Matt, I think they're coming. And when you look at it, when Yaya gets his first sack, I'm so excited to see this graphic come up.
Yes.
During the game day show.
We've been waiting.
Yes.
We've been waiting. We haven't been able to post it yet because Yaya hasn't had a sack. But yeah, that's one of the great benefits to watching the Pewter Game Day show is you get the cool graphics like that. Another one that we haven't gotten to play a lot. We didn't play it on Sunday's game against the Lions because they didn't do it, but the sack celebration / video as well.
But to your point, Matt, when you look at the fact that Yaya, he's had 12 pressures through 2 games. He's been to the ball. He's been right after the quarterback. In the first week, going up against Jaden Daniels, he had 2 opportunities to bring him down. Was so close to getting those sacks. They're coming, and I think when he gets one, it's going to kind of be like the turnovers. They're going to come in bunches. And Yaya, he very much can still be on his way to having a double-digit sack season. So excited to watch him on Sunday and see having that matchup without McGlinchey, if he can rise to the occasion.
Brian S. with the comment, only thing sub-zero is his sack total. No pun intended.
Oh, man.
That's cold. That's cold.
Ice cold.
He's been playing well, though. Again, there's a difference. He's been getting pressures, hasn't recorded the sacks. Now, at the same time, we can't sugarcoat Yaya not getting the sacks, but then still be like, well, this was the problem with Joe Tryon-Shoyinka for the first couple years of his career. So I do think eventually the chickens have to come home to roost, and he does need to get to the quarterback and maybe knock the ball away. But my concern level is very low in terms of the efficiency of Yaya Diaby. And also we got this comment from 28-3 says Yaya is 6th in pressures. I actually haven't looked up the whole league, so I will take your word for it. But yeah, that's another good example of how Yaya is still helping out the team. And Furu Kawaba, YouTube channel member, also brings up another good point. First 2 games was his preseason. We have to remember he hadn't played in a while, missed a whole month with that ankle injury, and looked pretty good, especially that Washington game, and then kind of got injured again in that second one, but was still able to finish the game. So don't worry just yet about Yaya Diaby. There's still a lot left on the table for Yaya. And going against a rookie quarterback, I think will help. I mean, we've seen Bo Nix get a little scatterbrained at times. He's thrown 4 picks and he's thrown some bad interceptions. You want to hope that he holds on to the football a little bit too long. And I think something, not just the sacks, but something that's going to help the Bucs is that Bo Nix isn't really throwing it down the field. I'm trying to pull up. There was a great stat found by Bailey Adams, our colleague at Pewter Report .com, had to do with Bo Nix. So Bailey actually found this from Austin Gale, who used to work for PFF. Says Bo Nix is 11 of 36 for 212 yards and 4 interceptions on passes more than 5 yards down the field. 5, not 50. 5 yards down the field. I'll read that again. He's 11 of 36. I don't even know that percent. I'm not a math guy.
30.6.
But that's bad. For 212 yards, 4 interceptions on passes more than 5 yards down the field. Actually, I should have just read the next sentence. 30.6 in a completion rate on such passes. That's worst in the league, and it's the worst for a quarterback in weeks 1 and 2 in the last 10 years. So we've gone a full decade, and we haven't seen a quarterback as bad as Bo Nix throwing the football more than 5 yards down the field. So that means a couple of things. Either it's going to be a great opportunity for the linebackers to get tons of tackles because he's throwing it short, maybe get some interceptions, or Jordan Whitehead and Christian Izien, Izien will add to his total, but Whitehead's going to make a big play, or, the cornerbacks are just going to absolutely eat because it's going to be softballs back there going to him.
Yeah, and the scouting report on Nix coming out of Oregon was he was kind of that game manager, like efficient quarterback. You didn't really see much of his arm, but at the NFL level, the fact that it's 5 yards and he struggled to move the ball downfield, I mean, they still have Cortland Sutton, Josh Reynolds. I mean, there's weapons there. And Sean Payton, he operated an offense so long in New Orleans where it was predicated on Drew Brees being efficient, like completing 70% of his passes. But Bo Nix has been the antithesis of that. He has not been efficient. The fact he hasn't thrown a touchdown in either game and has paired that with 4 interceptions, I mean, that's not a Sean Payton kind of quarterback.
Yeah.
And it presents an opportunity for the Bucs defense. Like you mentioned, Jordan Whitehead, Christian Izien, Zion McCollum, Jamel Dean. I mean, they all might make scenes on Sunday. Like, it's incredible.
I mean, throwing less than 5 yards, you or I could do that.
Yeah.
And we've thrown a couple of passes at the Bucs facility. Actually, I did at the Jaguars facility. Like, if the ball's loose, you got to give it back to the coach.
Yeah, that's great.
We're not NFL quarterbacks, which actually brings me a little off topic here. There was a great question that like went viral on the internet a little while ago. Adam, if you took over at halftime in the Super Bowl for a team, how big of a lead would you need to maintain that lead and win the Super Bowl if you took over at quarterback following halftime and you're on the winning Super Bowl team? How big of a lead do you need not to blow it?
The fact Matt Ryan blew it with 28, I would need a couple more points than that. I'm going to go with, I'd say probably 31, like 35. Yeah. That'd be a nice.
Yeah, I was thinking like 40. And feel free, everybody in the chat, if you want to put the amount of points you think you could have to maintain that lead. Because you got to think, you're just going to hand the ball off every single time and then occasionally throw a screen or stuff like that. So it's all about killing the clock and not turning the ball over and hoping your defense can make enough stops to keep that 40-point lead. Because if you drop back to pass, like, you're going to be done. You're either going to get sacked, you're going to turn the ball over, you're going to fumble it, whatever. So I think like 40 points might be the way to go. But anyway, the nice little off-topic subject.
I like this from Lord Jimbo's Kyle Shanahan, your coach. That'd be a big determinant in that.
Narad wants to know which defense is playing. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I guess you can kind of just go off of last season, maybe say the 49ers defense or something like that. But yeah, fun hypothetical. If everybody wants to put the points in, feel free to. But yeah, you're going 31. I'm going to say 40. Or you said 35. It's like 35 and 40. But we've got some super chats to get to. So enough of this nonsense. And let's get back to the Bucs conversation. Thanks to Paul Bowen, who, again, predicted the Bucs are going to have a 13-4 record this year. But thank you to Paul Bowen for this $9.99 super chat, who says, Terry Bradshaw was just saying the first few games are basically becoming preseason. Is that maybe a reason our backups on defense are playing so well? Because they've been playing. You know what? I hadn't really thought about that too much, but that's a really good point. I mean, some of the guys on offense have played a little bit more. The rookies that have made an impact, obviously they're going to play in the preseason. And yeah, it's a tough thing overall, right? Because you want to knock out the rust. And even I was watching the Dan Patrick show and he said like Tom Brady would say this with the Patriots that like their first 4 games of the season were like a preseason and then they'd kind of figure out what works. There's a lot of like testing and experimenting that goes on for every team in the first 4 weeks to figure out, all right, we're good at this, we're bad at that. And then you kind of, go back to the drawing board. That's a really interesting point. I think it has to play into it a little bit. Like Christian Izien was fighting for a roster spot. Now he's, the starting free safety with Antoine Winfield Jr. injured. Jalen McMillan got a ton of reps, both with backups and starters. We saw the big catch that he made in that preseason game, and he's had his moments in the regular season. I think there's a couple of things I think you could draw to and point to that the Bucs backups have been doing well. I mean, CJ Brewer fighting for a roster spot, played in all of the games. Same thing with the other, practice squad elevation. So I certainly think there's something to it. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, definitely. And I think like to the point that Paul's making with like the scoring around the league being down and with quarterbacks like stat lines through the first 2 weeks looking like they've only played 1 game. Like Brock Purdy's only thrown 1 touchdown. The best quarterbacks in the league at this point are Derek Carr, Sam Darnold, and Baker Mayfield. I mean, it does take a while to get going. And so you kind of see these guys that, like on the backup side of things, the guys that played a lot in the preseason, they're already more warm and less rusty than like the starters that barely played throughout the preseason. I think only like 9 starting quarterbacks played in the preseason. So when you look at that and the fact that all these offenses, they haven't scored, it takes some time to get going. And it kind of is like the preseason. And an analogy you can make is kind of in the basketball season, in the regular season, a lot of times, like just ramp up and get ready for the playoffs. The Patriots did it and they were successful. Like right now, it's not as important as it will be like 10 weeks from now. Every game's important, but I think you kind of slowly build to that and kind of reach your momentum at the right time.
Yeah, some basketball players, they're just straight chilling on game
big
day.
chilling.
Almost like they're just like hanging out on a cruise, maybe like the Tampa Bay Bucks cruise.
Bucks cruise. Of course we're playing pool volleyball.
Hey, we on the Bucs cruise, of course. Anytime I say Tampa, they will say Bay. Tampa!
Hey! Tampa! Hey!
Tampa! Hey!
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course, I've got my Super Bowl 37 hardware. What do you think?
We're on the Bucs cruise, and of course we had a pirate night. Arr!
Arr! That's right. Join us for the 2025 Tampa Bay Bucks cruise, which takes place March 7th through the 10th in 2025. Like I mentioned, it's the third annual Tampa Bay Bucks cruise. It's leaving on the beautiful Celebrity Silhouette ship. It's a 3-night cruise that begins in Fort Lauderdale and visits Key West and Bimini in the Bahamas. Last year's cruise included Rachaad White, Luke Gedeke, Kate Otten, Jamel Dean, Greg Gaines, and Christian Izien, along with Super Bowl 37 MVP Dexter Jackson, Hall of Famer Warren Sapp, the voice of the Bucs, Gene Deckerhoff, and confirmed for this year is Derek Brooks, along with the aforementioned Yaya Diaby. And also, Jordan Whitehead will be joining. Another Bucs legend confirmed for the trip is the A-Train. Woo-woo. Or I should say, toot-toot. The A-Train, Mike Allstott, also joining. So Bucs present and past will be there. Past and present, I guess I should say. There's also going to be photo and autograph opportunities with said players, a Raise the Flags sail away party, VIP parties with the players, special player interviews, a water volleyball challenge. I know I'm looking forward to that. Bucs trivia contests, and fun games, and much more. So reserve your cabin now on the 2025 Tampa Bay Bucks cruise, where drinks, including alcohol, Wi-Fi, and tips, are all included with a $200 deposit per person. To reserve your cabin, visit TampaBayBucsCruise.com or give them a call at 1-800-975-7112. That's TampaBayBucsCruise.com or 1-800-975-7112. 112. We have another super chat to get to. So thank you very much to Gaming Reaper for this very generous $19.99 super chat, who says, is there cause to be worried about the run blocking? I worry White is the type of back that needs a larger hole than Bucky. Not to say White is completely ineffective. We all know how valuable he is to the offense. Yeah, really good point, especially that last aspect of it. There is tons of value to Rachaad White, even though he's a bit different of a running back compared to Bucky Irving. I think the biggest difference, and I do think Rachaad White has gotten screwed over a little bit with just sometimes the poor blocking has really showed up with Rachaad in the game, and he is playing more, so there's kind of that likelihood of it happening. But I think the biggest difference for me between Rachaad White and Bucky Irving is Rachaad White is great in space, but the space already kind of needs to be there for him. Bucky Irving can create his own space, which kind of helps a lot more in between the tackles, getting to that second level. We know kind of the issues with Rachaad in terms of taking a little bit too long to just hit the hole and go. Is the run blocking is there cause to be worried? There's not cause to be worried yet. However, if we're in the middle of October, I think, especially when they play the Chiefs and the Ravens and a lot of these teams, I think kind of not long after the Thursday night game against the Falcons, if the run game is still a mess, then I think you start hitting the panic button a little bit. But through 2 games, I don't think you do that just yet, especially with the opponent they're playing on Sunday and how they struggle stopping the run.
Yeah, and I really like the point that you made when you talk about Rashad being good in space and kind of already needing that space established to find success. Bucky Irving, he's that shot creator, but Rashad, he's kind of that guy that gets off the screen, he's open and he can shoot. He's successful when
Yeah.
he has the space to operate. You saw that last year, the fact that he had over 1,500 scrimmage yards. He's a talented player. But this season, through the first 2 weeks, when you look at the front sevens of the Commanders and the Lions, there was a lot of talent. And by the time that Rashad already had the ball, the interior offensive linemen are already kind of losing their blocks. And that equates to these 2-yard runs that you're seeing. It isn't all on Rashad. And it kind of like this last year when you saw and kind of watched the film of the guys struggling early on in the season, you're hopeful that things can kind of turn around. If the blocks hold up for Rashad, I think he'll have more success. But to your point, he does need that space kind of already, more so than Bucky, who at 5'9", 190, I mean, he can kind of slip and slide wherever he needs to go to get 4 or 5 yards. Rashad doesn't have that ability because he's a bigger back, but there isn't cause for concern yet based on what you've kind of seen from Liam Cohen and operating the offense. But the fact that this has been such a long-standing issue for the Bucs, getting that run game off the ground, like it does leave you kind of worried.
Yeah, the run game as a whole too. Like we can divide up Rashad and Bucky as much as we want to, but the whole run game needs to be better. It's not just they need to run better when Rashad White is in the game. That's not the case. Bucky's just found a little bit more success early on. And I think that's a big thing to watch in this game specifically. And we also have to remember, like, the Lions have one of the top run-stopping defenses in the league. Luke Gedeke didn't play. I know he's not going to play this week either, but there's more ways to get it going on the ground, I think, this Sunday. And also, I want everyone to do well. I want Bucky to have a big game, so I can say "Nucky if you Bucky." Shout out to the song "Nuck if you Buck," an all-time classic. We got a super chat to get to. Thank you to David Van Dunn for the $1.99 super chat, who says, "I just ordered y'all's PR Victory Monday shirt. Let's go. We appreciate that. If you want to get some cool Pewter Report shirts, go to our store website on pewterreport.com. We got a Tampa Bay shirt, a couple of other great things. So thank you to David Van Dunn for ordering a Victory Monday shirt. We really appreciate that. And
should be able to use it a little bit more this season.
Yeah, exactly.
Back to 2-0. I mean, might be wearing it 10 more times.
And then the occasional Victory Friday and a Victory Tuesday, but obviously Victory Monday is the bulk of it. We also want to send a very big thank you to all of our Pewter Report Platinum members. So shout out to Scott Federico, Guru, Scotty J, Rathel Gordon, and Noah Parr. You are all fantastic people. We appreciate your support as a Pewter Platinum member of PewterReport.com. We think all of our fans are fantastic people. And by the way, if you are a Pewter Report YouTube channel member, a Platinum member, and a Premier member, we will be having our next Pewter Insider tomorrow on Friday at 1 o'clock. We've done 1:30 the last 2 weeks. We're doing 1 o'clock today just because of a little scheduling thing that we have going on. So 1 o'clock, we'll put out the reminder either later tonight or early tomorrow. If you can join us, that would be fantastic. If you want to become a Pewter Report YouTube channel member, just hit the join button on our YouTube page if you're watching the show right now. We have several different levels of being a Pewter Report YouTube channel member: the Pewter People, Pewter Pro, Pewter Premier, and Pewter Platinum. Each one has its own special little benefits and things like that. And yeah, we appreciate everybody's support. Adam, one thing we talked about off the field, behind the scenes, if you will, doesn't directly have to do with the Bucs. It does affect the NFC South, but there was some big news with the Carolina Panthers this week. Former Bucs offensive coordinator, now Panthers head coach, Dave Canales, announced that they are benching last year's number 1 overall pick, Bryce Young, and going with the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, the 37-year-old Andy Dalton, 34, 37. After 2 weeks, and Baker Mayfield was asked about it as well because Baker was a number 1 overall pick and wasn't in the exact same situation that Bryce Young was in, but certainly, got shipped off, got benched, went to a couple of different teams. So Baker gave his opinion on it. You could see it on all of our social media. But Adam, your overall thoughts about this move by the Carolina Panthers, who obviously play in the division, and the Bucs will see twice this season.
Yeah, I think first off, we have a really unique angle to this. The fact that Dave Canales is now the coach over there. Baker, only 2 seasons ago, he was jettisoned from the Panthers. And the fact that Dave Canales went over to Carolina to revive Bryce Young's career after he worked with Geno Smith, got it up and running. Baker Mayfield got it going. You're kind of expecting, oh, okay, working with Bryce Young, you're going to get a full season out of him. Matt, when you look at the fact that they benched Bryce Young 2 games into the season, 18 games into his career, like just the lack of confidence and the fact that really the fan base isn't upset by the move. And Bryce Young, he's just been so abysmal. But like on the flip side of that token, the Panthers don't have any weapons and they don't have any support for Bryce Young to really function in an offense compared to his days at Alabama when he was surrounded by first rounders at wide receiver, running back, offensive line, had a stable coaching environment. He's in the opposite situation now in Carolina. And with David Tepper as the owner, they've gotten rid of Cam Newton, Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, and now Bryce Young, he's already kind of being shipped out the door. That rotating cast of quarterbacks, it's very Cleveland Browns-esque. And they might have another 20 quarterbacks in 20 seasons. When does that stop? And for Bryce Young, kind of the same thing with, like, you can compare it to the Bucs run game. It isn't all on the running backs, just like it isn't all on Bryce Young. Like the offense, the system that he's been in, 2 games into the season with a whole new coaching staff, so many new players and things around him. It's not all his fault, but at this point in his career, his confidence is shattered. Will he be able to build back up?
It's just crazy that Dave Canales was brought in to fix Bryce Young or help get the most out of Bryce Young and develop Bryce Young. And you're giving up on him after 2 games. And I get that it was bad and there were a lot of mistakes, but isn't that part of the process of identifying the mistakes and then overcoming them? Like, I don't understand how David Tepper doesn't get that this is going to be a little bit of a long-term process. And that's the issue with a lot of things in the NFL is that everybody immediately looks to the instant reaction, really the instant results. And if the results aren't there immediately, people panic and they start trying to make changes and things like that. A lot of the guys that you mentioned, like Geno Smith ran out of town. Sam Darnold ran out of town. Baker Mayfield ran out of town. Look at how all of them are doing now, years and years later. I think another great example is right here at Tampa Bay with Jason Light. Jason was the general manager of some bad teams. He drafted Jameis. He made some other bad draft picks. Many other owners around the league may have fired Jason Light before Jason had the chance to get Bruce Arians, which eventually led to Tom Brady and Gronk and Leonard Fournette and, everybody else in between. Sometimes things take more than a year. Sometimes a plan takes a little bit longer to come to fruition. But when it does, you can truly get great things. And you're seeing it around the league right now with all the quarterbacks that we just mentioned. And who's to say that Bryce Young would eventually, get a career resurgence like some of these other guys did. But the fact that you're giving up on him after 2 games, like the impatience of David Tepper is off the charts because you can't fire Dave Canales, and now you're paying 5 different head coaches. You're going to ask the next coach to do the same exact thing. It's just impossible. And Andy Dalton isn't the long-term solution for the Carolina Panthers. I think Greg Allman said something great the other day. Works for Fox Sports. Everyone knows Greg.
Yeah.
He was on the J&Z show, and he was talking about it. And he said, if you're a Panthers fan, what are you rooting for this season? Because if Andy Dalton plays better, and he is a better quarterback, that means the Panthers are winning 5 or 6 games. You're not even getting the first overall pick, which is probably the best solution for the Panthers at the moment. And then, so you're in the middle of the road. You don't have a second pick because you made the dumbest trade of all time, giving away all of those picks. And you're just kind of in no man's land with no solution to get out of it. So I know it's a little off topic, but it does affect the Bucs. Let me see if I can pull up Baker's quotes real quick to bring it truly full circle. Give me 1 second. All right, I have the quotes. Well, I have his press conference that he brought up. Okay, yeah. So this is Baker talking about Bryce Young and the whole situation. He goes, obviously, mine talking about Baker's own personal situation. Mine didn't happen in the same time frame with Bryce, but quarterback is hard, especially for young guys. When you're not surrounded with the pieces, you're not given the opportunity to have success. A lot of the time, guys have the talent. They might have the brains, but they don't have the right opportunity or the right fit. I'm sitting here right now in a way better fit than the other places I've been. That's not to put other teams down, but it's a matter of the pieces around you and the coaches. For Bryce, I can relate to this, but finding that belief in yourself again, he'll get it. His story is far, far from finished. And I think we're seeing it right now with Baker. Like, I don't know, Adam, but I think this is the best Baker Mayfield has looked since he won his Heisman at Oklahoma. Your thoughts?
Ooh, I like that. And I also like that he plays his best when he's confident and has that little bit of swag to him. And you kind of see it now in spurts. Like in week 1, he ran for a first down, got up, did the charismatic first down point.
Slime me out? Yeah.
Yeah, slime me up, cuh. And then last week, you kind of see these moments of confidence, but that confidence is when Baker plays at his best. At Oklahoma, he maybe wasn't the most mature player, but now that he's matured, but still is confident and knows that he can be successful and be a top tier quarterback, you're kind of seeing like the tide turn for Mayfield and him just being able to operate and be himself truly. Like he mentioned on a podcast with Corey Kluber earlier this week that when the Bucs brought him in on a 1-year deal, Jason Light, the front office, Todd Bowles, they told him, just be yourself. You're not going to be Tom Brady. You're Baker Mayfield. And the fact that he was able to kind of step into his own shoes and be comfortable without all the expectations and the weight, that's when you kind of saw him take off. And for Bryce Young, he came in with enormous expectations. The trade to get him, it may be as bad as a Herschel Walker trade in the long run if Caleb Williams can live up to his potential. You put that weight on his little shoulders. I mean, he's not a big guy. You're putting that enormous weight on him. And expecting him to
when he's down, man.
It's not fair, you know?
Picking him when he's down. Thanks to Paul Bowen for this $1.99 super chat. What if this is part of Dave's plan to fix Bryce?
Could be.
Possibly, but then I almost feel like you got to start the season that way. You know? Like you kind of start with him sitting and figure it out, and then eventually you go back to Bryce Young. I know it's tough because he started last year, but you know, new regime, new coach, that type of thing. It could be part of it. And, you know, it'll be weird. It'll be interesting. It's weird. It's odd, but it's also kind of interesting to see what they'll do like later in the year. Like, do they just stick with Andy Dalton even if they keep losing? Do they say, all right, like maybe Bryce has got it together now? That remains to be seen, but it's intriguing for sure. Makes it way more interesting when it comes to, betting on some of the Panthers games this year. Or the Bucs games as well. Of course, you can do all your betting over at BetUS. Listen up, sports bettors. Your favorite sports book, BetUS.com, is back for their 30th year of NFL action. That's, I think, a little bit longer than Scott has been covering the Bucs. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 125%, BetUS offers its members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including the NFL, UFC, which I was talking with Mike Evans about a little bit today, and Major League Baseball. If you're looking for live, in-game betting, incredible odds with daily odds boosters, props, and parlays, BetUS has got them. How about fast payouts and exceptional one-to-one customer service? BetUS has got that too. So log into betus.com or call 800-792-3887. That's 800-79-BET-US. So betus.com, where the game begins. And of course, after you win all that money, you want to make sure you invest it very well too. And there's no better people to work with your money than over at Immuni Financial.
At Amuni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you.
And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you? Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it. All right. Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track, so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Amuni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
Oh, funny enough, Colorado is coming to Tampa this week with the Broncos playing the Buccaneers. But the cool thing about Immuni Financial, which has proudly been serving clients across the country since 1980, is that they got locations all over the place, not just in Tampa, not just in Colorado. You can be in Oregon, California, Vermont, Ohio, anywhere really. And there is Immuni Financial. So check them out, see how they can help you over at Immuni Financial. All right, that's about just going to do it for us on today's show. If you're not already doing so, please make sure you follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Just a reminder to everybody, we have the Pewter Insider tomorrow for Premier and Platinum members. That's at 1 o'clock tomorrow. We have the Pewter pregame show where Scott and I will break down Bucs versus Broncos and the biggest matchups in the game. The pregame show will be on Sunday at 9 o'clock. And then Pewter Game Day with myself and Josh Capo. A couple of WDAE appearances as well. That's at 1 o'clock when Bucs and Broncos kick off. We'll get to a lot of fan interaction, comments, and stuff from the Pewter people as well. And it's always, always a fun time. And then, of course, after the Bucs game, we will have a Pewter post-game show after we hear from Baker and Todd Bowles. So that's coming out Sunday afternoon around 5:30-ish or 4:30-ish, I guess I should say, something like that. So that's going to do for us on today's show. For Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you on Sunday for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.